Listen, K-Fam. 3 a.m. A laundromat on the edge of Koreatown. A black woman asleep in the plastic chair, still in her navy scrubs. Ayu. The door opens. Meet Victoria Price, 27. Emergency ward RN at an LA public hospital, 12-hour shift. Lost a teenager on the table tonight, gave her cab to a pregnant colleague and walked. She sleeps because her body finally gave out. Now meet Kang Tae-hyun, 35. They call him the Quiet One. Supreme boss of a West Coast Korean mafia family. 3-piece black suit, signet ring, a black dragon tattoo climbing from his chest to the base of his neck. He walks in with a leather bag. He sees her sleeping. He sits 3 chairs away, and he waits. 40 minutes, in complete silence. Outside, his right hand recognizes her face through the glass, and keeps a secret he has carried for 7 years. When she wakes up, she cuts him down with a sharp tongue and tells him to stay out of her world. So he does the one thing a man like him never does. He shows up at her ER the next morning, 2 paper coffees, $2.50 each. And he waits 5 hours in the common waiting room, K-Fam, like anybody else. She says yes to dinner, on one condition: they split the bill. But what she doesn't know yet is what waits inside that leather bag, and why the man outside the car would rather die than tell her the truth. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Victoria's palm was still pressed to the boy's chest when the flatline ate the room. 14 minutes of compressions, 2 rounds of epinephrine, a father in the hallway who had run 3 red lights to get here, and a mother who had not yet been told. She counted to 10 inside her own head, then she said the time, and Loretta Whitfield wrote it on the board without looking up, because Loretta had been an emergency head nurse long enough to know that the ones who look up cry. Victoria stripped the gloves off. The snap of the latex was louder than her voice. Families in 3. Chaplain's coming, Loretta said. You don't have to. I'll do it. She walked to the sink first. She washed her hands the way she had been taught in her first month on the ward, wrist to fingertip, 60 seconds, because the sink was the last honest thing before a door like that one. The gold chain at her collarbone caught the fluorescent light. The small V pendant lay flat against her skin. She dried her hands. She rolled her shoulders back once. Then she went in. She did not remember, later, exactly what she said to them. She remembered the mother's hand finding her forearm and staying there. She remembered the father saying thank you 3 times, each time smaller than the last, until the third one was only a shape his mouth made. She remembered sliding a box of tissues across the little table with the fake wood grain, and thinking, with the strange clarity that came at these hours, that whoever had chosen fake wood grain for a room like this had never sat in one. She closed the door of room 3 behind her softly, because the softness was the last small courtesy she could offer them, and then she stood in the hallway with her back to the door for a count of 4. Loretta was at the nurse's station, pretending not to watch. She was pretending very badly. The reading glasses on the little gold chain around Loretta's neck had slid to the tip of her nose. She was writing something in the log that did not need to be written. You want a minute? Loretta said, without looking up. I want the next chart. I asked if you wanted a minute, and I said the next chart. Loretta stopped writing. She lifted the reading glasses off the tip of her nose. She looked at Victoria over the top of the chain the way she had looked at her the first week Victoria had rotated through the ward, back when Victoria had been 23, and afraid of the phone, and afraid of the pharmacy, and afraid, mostly, of being seen being afraid. Baby, Loretta, go to the break room. 5 minutes. That's an order from your charge nurse, and I outrank God tonight. Victoria almost smiled. She did not quite. She took the 5 minutes. The break room was empty. The microwave clock said 2:12. Someone had left a half-eaten container of rice on the little counter by the sink, and a note stuck to the container that said, "If you eat this, I will find you. Hannah." Victoria almost smiled at that one too. She sat in the plastic chair by the window. She looked at her hands. Her hands were steady. They were always steady. That was the thing about her hands, and it was also the thing she hated most about them tonight, because steady hands did not care what they had just failed to do. When she came out, the hallway smelled of coffee that had been on the burner too long. Hannah Yoon was sitting on the bench by the vending machine, with one hand on the top of her belly, the way she had started doing at 7 months without noticing. Hannah's light pink scrub top rode up when she breathed. Her sneakers were untied. "You're still here," Victoria said. "Ride's late. He got called." Victoria looked at the clock over the elevator. 2:40 in the morning. Los Angeles in November. Wet asphalt outside. The kind of night that made the buses run early or not at all. "Come on." "Vic?" "No." "Come on. I'll get you a car." "It's on me." "Hannah." Victoria's voice was flat and low. "You are 7 months pregnant, sitting on a plastic bench at 2:40. Get up." Hannah got up. Victoria walked her out through the ambulance bay, because the ambulance bay was closer, and because at this hour, the drivers who idled there were nurses' drivers, the reliable ones. She flagged a black and white sedan. She leaned in through the passenger window and gave the address in Koreatown twice, once in English and once with the cross street, because tired drivers heard cross streets better than they heard house numbers. She held her own card out. "Put it on this." "Vic, come on." "On this, go home. Text me when you're in the door." Hannah kissed her thumb and pressed it to Victoria's cheek. It was a small thing. It was the smallest thing. Victoria felt it long after the sedan pulled away, long after the taillights bled around the corner of Grand and disappeared into the gauze of rain that was not quite rain. She stood alone at the curb for a second, then she turned up her collar and she walked. She did not walk toward home. Home was 14 blocks in the other direction, a studio on the 2nd floor above a Colombian bakery that opened at 4, and Victoria could not sit inside 4 walls with the sound of that flat line still living in her ears. She walked west, because west was where the 24-hour laundromat was, and the laundromat was warm, and the laundromat had chairs that faced a window, and the laundromat was owned by 2 people who had, without ever discussing it, decided that Victoria's dollar bills were not the reason they were kind to her. Her navy scrub top had a coffee ring near the 2nd button. She had spilled it at 11, when the paramedics came in with the 2nd overdose of the shift, and there had not been a minute since to change. She did not change now. She walked the 8 blocks with her hands buried in her pockets, and her breath making short, pale ghosts in front of her mouth. The city was quiet in the way it only got at this hour. A city bus hissed past empty. A man walked a dog on a rope. Someone was arguing on a phone half a block behind her, and then not. Cho's 24-hour laundromat sat on the corner of 6th and a side street whose name Victoria never bothered to read. The front window was fogged from the inside. Through the fog she could see the row of dryers along the back wall, glowing like little furnaces, and she could see Mr. Cho behind the counter with his glasses down on the tip of his nose, folding a stack of towels that were not his to fold. Mrs. Cho had gone home hours ago. Mr. Cho stayed till dawn on Thursdays, because on Thursdays the delivery drivers came at 5, and one of them had to be there. The bell above the door made a small tin sound. Mr. Cho looked up. He did not smile with his mouth. He smiled with the whole loose skin around his eyes, the way old people who liked you did. "You look tired," he said. "I am tired." "You want tea?" "Please." He tipped his chin toward the row of plastic chairs along the front window. Victoria walked past him. She dropped her bag on the second chair from the left and sat in the third. She put her head back against the cool glass. She closed her eyes for what she thought was a second. Mr. Cho set the paper cup on the little sill by her elbow. The tea was barley tea, hot, no sugar. He put a folded square of paper towel under it so it would not leave a ring. Then he went back behind his counter, and he did not speak to her again, because he had learned in 51 years of running that laundromat that some tired had a mouth and some tired did not. Victoria did not intend to sleep. She intended to breathe for 10 minutes and then walk home. But the barley tea warmed her chest, and the dryers behind her hummed a low, even hum, and somewhere between one breath and the next, she went under. She dreamed of nothing. That was the mercy of it. She just went dark. Mr. Cho glanced up from the towels once, then twice. On the second glance, he crossed to the little thermostat by the door and nudged it up 2 degrees. He picked up the wool cardigan Mrs. Cho left on the back of the counter stool and, moving with the practiced quiet of a man who had raised 3 sleepers in one small house, he draped it over Victoria's shoulders. He did not tuck it. Tucking was for the ones you knew. Draping was for the ones you respected. He went back to the counter. He wrote a note on a post-it in Korean and stuck it to the register, in case Mrs. Cho came in early. The nurse is resting. Leave her. Outside, the wet street held the reflections of the neon Cho's 24 sign, upside down, in a long red and yellow smear. 2 blocks east, a police cruiser rolled through a green light without slowing. A woman in a puffer coat pushed a stroller with no baby in it, only a black trash bag folded in the seat, and she pushed it at the exact same speed a mother would have pushed a sleeping child. Los Angeles at 3 in the morning kept its secrets by being ordinary about them. The black SUV pulled up to the curb at 3:17 in the morning with its lights already off. It did not park. It stopped. The engine kept running, low, the kind of low idle a car makes when it has been tuned to be quiet. The rear passenger door opened. A man stepped out. He was tall. He filled the frame of the door the way a door frame is meant to be filled and rarely is. He wore a bespoke 3-piece black suit, the vest buttoned, the jacket buttoned, the tie a thin band of black against a white shirt so crisp it looked wet. His shoes made no sound on the sidewalk. He carried a small leather duffel in his left hand. His right hand was empty and open, fingers relaxed at his side. Kang Tae-hyun did not look at the SUV. He did not look at the man who stayed in the driver's seat, or at the second man who had already stepped out on the far side and taken up a position at the back bumper, with his hands folded in front of him. He looked at the door of the laundromat. He crossed the sidewalk in 4 steps. He pushed the door open with the flat of his palm. The bell made its small tin sound again. Mr. Cho was folding a shirt. He froze with the shirt half folded. Then, with the exact same unhurried motion, he finished folding it. He set it on the pile. He looked up. He did not stand. "Wash?" he said. Tae-hyun crossed to the counter. He set the duffel on it. He unzipped it partway. Mr. Cho did not lean forward. Tae-hyun said, in Korean, "2 loads, whites separate. I will wait. You can leave it. I close at 6. I will wait." Mr. Cho nodded once. He did not ask which detergent. He did not ask about starch. He picked up the duffel, and he carried it to the 2 machines at the far end, and he began, without hurry, to separate the whites from the darks, with hands that had learned long ago not to be curious about what came in on a Thursday at 3 in the morning. Tae-hyun turned from the counter. His eyes went first to the front window, because the front window was the exit and the entrance both, and men in his line of work looked at the exit before they looked at anything else. That was when he saw her. Victoria was in the 3rd chair. Her head rested against the glass. The paper cup of barley tea was still steaming on the sill. Her navy scrub top had a small coffee stain near the 2nd button. The gold chain at her collarbone had slid, and the small V pendant lay against the hollow of her throat. and her long, honey-blonde curls had fallen forward over her shoulder in a heavy, soft wave. Her right hand was open in her lap, palm up, fingers curled loosely, the way hands rested only in real sleep. He stopped. He did not stare. Staring was for men who had never learned to see things once and remember them. He looked at her the way a man looks at a lamp that has been left on in an empty room, and then he looked away, and then he looked back, and that second look was the one he did not fully understand. He walked. He passed her chair without slowing. He sat down in the 6th chair from the left, 3 seats away from her, facing the same window. He set his hands on his thighs. He did not cross his legs. He waited. Outside, the second man had noticed. Park Dae-jin was 40 years old and had been standing behind Kang Tae-hyun in some form or another for 11 of those years, and he had a particular way of noticing things that meant he did not turn his head. He kept his body angled to the street. He moved only his eyes. Through the fogged glass he saw the woman in the 3rd chair. He saw the honey-blonde curls. He saw the navy scrub, the coffee stain, the little gold V. He saw the badge clipped at her chest, V. Price, RN, emergency. And he did not need to read it because he had already read it, 7 years ago, in a hospital room where his own blood had made a dark pool on the linoleum, and a young nurse with hands too steady for her age had held a compress to the side of his neck for the 18 minutes it took the surgeon to walk in from the parking lot. The vertical scar over Dae-jin's right eyebrow was a thin white line that only showed under certain kinds of light. This was one of those kinds of light. He touched it once, briefly, with the pad of his thumb, and then he lowered his hand. He looked at the driver. The driver had also seen the woman. The driver had a question in the corner of his mouth. Dae-jin gave the smallest shake of his head. The driver's mouth went flat again. That was the end of that. Dae-jin turned his eyes back to the street. He would not speak of this. He would not speak of it to Tae-hyun in the car later. He would not speak of it to Tae-hyun tomorrow, or the day after that, or the week after that. What he owed the woman in the 3rd chair was older than what he owed the man in the 6th, and older debts sat higher on the ledger. That was a thing he had learned from his own father, who had been a butcher and not a soldier, and who had said, more than once, over a bowl of soup, that a man who forgets who saved him is a man who deserves to be killed again. He faced the street. He watched the corner. He was very still. Inside, the dryers ran. Mr. Cho moved from one machine to the next. The fluorescent light hummed a note just below middle C. Kang Tae-hyun sat in the 6th chair and watched, through the fogged window, a city that was not sleeping so much as pretending to. Every 17 or 18 minutes a car went past. Once a shopping cart. Once a fox. Actually a fox, thin and gray-red and unbothered, crossing 6th Street, on business of its own. He did not look again, directly, at the woman 3 seats over. He did not need to. He knew where her breath was. He knew the small, even rise of her shoulder against the glass. He knew when a strand of her hair slipped down and touched her cheek, and he knew she did not wake. The washer at the far end clicked into its final rinse. Water surged. The building's old bones took the surge and let it go. 40 minutes passed. He counted them the way he counted most things, which was without counting. It was 3:57 in the morning when Mr. Cho carried a folded pile of clean clothes to the counter, wrapped it in brown paper, tied it with a length of white cotton string, and set it on top of the leather duffel. Tae-hyun stood. He crossed to the counter. He laid 3 bills on it. Mr. Cho pushed one back. Tae-hyun left the 2. He carried the parcel and the duffel to the door with his left hand. His right hand rested loose at his side. At the door, he paused. He did not turn his head. He did not look at the 3rd chair. "Thank you," he said in Korean, to Mr. Cho. "Come again." He stepped out. The bell made its small tin sound. Dae-jin was already at the rear door of the SUV, holding it open. Tae-hyun ducked in. The parcel went on the seat beside him. Dae-jin closed the door with a soft, expensive click. He walked around the back of the SUV, opened the far door, got in. The driver waited 2 seconds, the way he had been taught to wait, and then the SUV pulled away from the curb without ever having turned on its lights. Inside the laundromat, Victoria slept on. She did not know that a man in a black 3-piece suit had sat 3 chairs from her for 40 minutes and then left without a word. She did not know that the man outside had chosen, in a single silent moment, to keep her from being a name in a report. She did not know any of it. The bell above the door had stopped moving. The barley tea on the sill had gone cool. On the counter, under the small yellow lamp, Mr. Cho was folding towels again. He glanced once, briefly, at the 3rd chair. He shook his head at nothing. Then he went back to his work. Somewhere behind the dryers, the second hand of a plastic wall clock caught up to the minute and moved on. 4 in the morning, then 5 past, then 10. Victoria stirred once, the way sleeping people stir, and did not wake. Mr. Cho carried a second paper cup of barley tea to the sill. He set it down beside the first, the way you set a fresh cup beside a cup gone cold, so the sleeper can choose without having to ask. He looked at the 3rd chair one more time. The little gold V at Victoria's collarbone rose and fell with her breath. The wool cardigan had slipped down her arm. He nudged it back up with one finger, no more than that, and then he stepped away. Outside, the SUV was already 3 blocks away, running quiet through the wet streets of a city that had, without her knowing it, just changed the direction of her life. Victoria woke to the sound of a coin dropping into a metal drum. Her cheek was pressed to the fogged window, and for a second she did not know which city she was in. Then her hand found the wool cardigan across her shoulders, and the smell of barley tea, and the low hum of the last dryer finishing its cycle, and she remembered. Cho's. 6th Street, Thursday almost gone. She sat up slowly. Her neck cracked once, sharp. The clock above the coin machine read 4:42. Mr. Cho was already watching her from the counter, arms folded on top of a stack of folded pillowcases, eyes crinkled the way old men's eyes crinkle when they've decided you are someone worth being patient for. He said nothing about how long she had slept. He only lifted the copper kettle a few inches off the burner, a question without words. Victoria shook her head. "I'm okay, Mr. Cho. Thank you." He nodded once and set the kettle back down anyway, and a minute later, a fresh paper cup arrived at her elbow, steaming, sitting on the same little square of napkin as the first one. The tea was so hot it burned her lower lip on the first sip. She welcomed it. It reminded her she still had a body. "You slept 2 hours," Mr. Cho said, in the careful English he used with her, each word placed like a stone across a stream. "Good sleep, no moving, no dreaming." "I don't remember dreaming." "That is the good kind." She almost laughed. The muscles in her cheeks were slow to remember how. She checked her phone. 2 texts from Hana, one at 3:11. "Home, love you, sleep, tell me tomorrow." And one at 4:12. "Baby is kicking like she's mad at somebody. Get some rest before you come back." Victoria pressed the phone to her chest for a second, and then answered only the last one. "On my way home, feed the mad girl a cracker for me." She peeled the wool cardigan off her shoulders, folded it carefully with the seam facing in, and set it on the counter next to a small ceramic cat with a raised paw. Mr. Cho pretended not to see her leave a folded $5 bill under the cat's belly. He would find it later, argue with the wall about it, and put it into the register anyway. At the door, she turned around. "Mr. Cho, if I don't come next Thursday, don't wait up." He tilted his head. "Then I close early, but you will come." She smiled without teeth and stepped out into a Koreatown morning that had not yet decided whether it was going to be cold. The pavement was wet from a rain she had slept through. Under the sodium lights, the puddles were the color of old brass. 6th Street was almost empty. A bakery van 2 blocks down, a man in a green vest hosing down the sidewalk in front of a shuttered barber shop, a stray cat crossing at an angle only cats understand. Victoria pulled the scrub jacket tighter against her ribs and started walking east. 8 blocks to Cho's had taken her 40 minutes on tired feet the night before. 14 blocks home would take longer. She did not mind. Walking, at this hour, was the closest thing she had to prayer. She passed the Colombian bakery on the ground floor of her building at 5:23. The oven light was already on. Doña Beatriz waved through the glass without stopping the arm that was punching a mound of dough. Victoria waved back and climbed the narrow staircase to the 2nd floor, 3 flights that always smelled faintly of yeast and cardamom, and pushed her door open with her hip. Her studio was 1 room, a bed under the window, a small kitchen against the wall, a shower behind a curtain. On the little table by the bed sat a paperback of Beloved, opened face down, the way her mother had told her 1,000 times not to leave a book. Victoria set her phone next to it, unpinned the badge from her chest. V. Price, RN, emergency, and laid it flat on the table like it was something you rest. She did not shower yet. She sat on the edge of the bed, still in the coffee-stained scrub, and unclasped the thin gold chain from around her neck. The little V pendant caught the lamp for a second before she set it on the badge. Then she looked at her hands. They were steady. They were always steady. They had been steady through the 14 minutes of compressions. They had been steady while she said the words to the boy's mother. They had been steady on the walk to Cho's. They were steady now. That was the part nobody warned you about, the not shaking. The way a body that had done its job all night refused to let you fall apart even when you asked it to. She lay back with her feet still on the floor and closed her eyes. At 6:40, she got up, showered until the hot water ran out, dressed in a clean navy scrub with the V-chain tucked inside the collar, ate a piece of Doña Beatriz's cheese bread at the counter, and walked back to the hospital for the tail end of a shift she had already technically finished. Loretta would fight her at the door. She would let Loretta fight, and then she would help Hannah finish her rounds, because Hannah's ankles were the size of pears. 3 miles east, in a converted warehouse behind a shuttered pool hall in the industrial spine of downtown, Kang Tae-hyun was standing at a bathroom sink watching water run over his hands. He had already washed them once. He was washing them again. He did not know he was doing it. The bathroom was long and narrow, black tile from floor to ceiling, a single row of white sinks like a hospital corridor. He had told the architect exactly that. Like a hospital corridor. And the architect had smiled a nervous smile and delivered on the description. Behind him, folded on a leather stool, was the brown paper parcel Mr. Cho had wrapped with white twine. 2 white shirts, a black undershirt, that was all it had ever been. Tae-hyun turned off the water and looked at himself in the mirror. The dragon at his collar was covered by the crisp white shirt he had put on 12 minutes ago. His tie was hanging loose around his neck, unknotted, because he had started to knot it and stopped, and started again and stopped, and set his hands on the edge of the sink instead. He was thinking about a chain, a thin gold chain with a single letter hanging from it, V. He had seen it for perhaps 4 seconds. She had been asleep, and the curls had spilled forward, and the chain had caught the fluorescent light of the laundromat once when she breathed. He had looked away. He had made himself look at the parcel on the counter. He had counted 6 folds of a pillowcase Mr. Cho was doing on the other side of the room. He had watched a moth on the ceiling above the drying rack. And then he had looked at the chain again. He was not a man who looked twice. He had built 40 years of survival on not looking twice. He knotted the tie in one motion, cold. He picked up the parcel and walked out of the bathroom, into a room that had no natural light and no soft edges. Two men at a low table stopped talking when he entered. A third man rose from a chair by the door. Park Dae-jin was already standing at the window, back to him, hands folded at the small of his back, the way a soldier stands when he is waiting to be told something he already knows. Dae-jin. Boss. Tae-hyun set the parcel on the low table. The laundromat on 6th. Yes, there was a woman. Dae-jin did not turn around. His shoulders did not move. Yes, boss. She works at a hospital. Her badge said so. Which hospital? Silence. Just long enough that Tae-hyun noticed it, and Dae-jin noticed him noticing. West General, Dae-jin said. Public. On 9th. You knew that without checking. I recognized the badge. Tae-hyun waited. The two men at the low table had gone very still. They were pretending to look at the papers in front of them. They were not fooling anyone in the room, least of all themselves. Dae-jin. Yes, boss. Turn around. Da-jin turned. His face was the face of a man who had spent 11 years perfecting the trick of being unreadable to the one man in the world who could read him. The vertical scar on his right eyebrow caught the lamp for a half-second. Tae-hyun had never asked about that scar. It had been there the day Dae-jin walked into his life, and Tae-hyun had assumed a knife, or a bar fight, or a bad night in Busan, and it had not seemed like his business. He wondered, for the first time in 11 years, whose business it might be. You knew her, Tae-hyun said. It was not a question. Tae-jin held his eyes. I have seen her, boss. That is not the same thing. No, boss. Tae-hyun let the silence sit. The two men at the low table were now openly not breathing. Somewhere down the hall, a door closed and someone laughed once, quickly cut off. Dae-jin, if there is something I need to know about that woman, you tell me now. If there is something I do not need to know, you keep it. But do not lie to me. Not about her. Not about anyone. Dae-jin's jaw moved once. He glanced, very briefly, at the paper parcel on the low table. Then he looked back at Tae-hyun and said, with the flat honesty of a man who had picked the exact truth he was willing to say, Boss, she is a good person. That is the thing you need to know. Everything else is her story. It is not mine to tell. Tae-hyun considered him for a long moment. Something in Tae-hyun's chest did a thing he did not have a name for. He filed it away for later, the way he filed everything. All right. Tae-jin exhaled the breath he had not admitted to holding. Tae-hyun turned to the low table. The shipment tomorrow. Walk me through it. The two men jumped as if a starter's pistol had gone off. Papers rustled. A phone was slid across the table. The room resumed being a room where dangerous men made dangerous decisions about dangerous things. Tae-hyun listened, asked 3 questions, corrected 1 number, approved. He did not touch the parcel again. At 9:30 that morning, in a small windowless office behind the emergency triage bay, Loretta Whitfield was arguing with Victoria in a whisper so intense that the whisper had teeth. Go home. I'm here now. You clocked out at 3:10. You are on the clock again in 12 hours. 12. That is not a shift. That is a punishment. And I am the one who signs the punishment sheets. Go home. Hana needs help with room 4. Hana has help. I am the help. Go home. You have 3 of your own patients. Victoria. Loretta. They stared at each other across a metal desk the color of old army coats. Loretta's reading glasses, on their gold chain, sat crooked halfway down her nose. Loretta took her glasses off and rubbed the bridge of her nose. You lost a kid last night. I know. You lost a kid, and instead of going home to sleep, you slept in a Korean laundromat like a stray dog. Mr. Cho gave me tea. Mr. Cho should have called me. Mr. Cho does not have your number. Then I will give it to him. Loretta let out a long breath through her teeth. Fine. 1 hour. You do 1 hour of the lightest thing I can find, and then you go home, or so help me, I will call your mother in Baltimore. You do not have my mother's number either. Watch me. Victoria almost smiled. She turned to go. Vic. She stopped in the doorway. Loretta had taken the glasses off again. She was holding them by one earpiece, tapping them lightly against the desk. The boy last night. His name was Marcus. His mother wrote a note. She asked me to give it to the nurse with the long hair and the kind hands. That's you. Victoria did not turn around all the way. She looked at the doorframe, at a small dent in the paint where a gurney had bumped it years before she started. Where is it? On your locker. Read it when you are ready, not before. Thank you, Loretta. Go save somebody easy, my gift to you. Victoria walked out into the fluorescent hum of the corridor and stood for a moment, with her hand flat against the cool cinder-block wall. She did not name what she felt. She named, instead, the thing in front of her. Room 4. IV bag needs changing. Curtain track squeaks. And she moved. That was the discipline. You named the next thing. You did the next thing. The chain around her neck sat warm against her sternum, and the little V rose and fell with her breath, and her hands, as always, were steady. By 11, the emergency bay had thinned to the ordinary weekday clatter. A sprained wrist, a fever, a man in his 60s who had walked in on his own because his left arm felt funny, and who was, right now, being wheeled toward the cath lab because Victoria had put her stethoscope on him and heard everything. She stood at the nurse's station writing the handoff note in the neat block letters her mother had taught her when she was 7, and she did not notice the man in the black 3-piece suit until Loretta cleared her throat. Loretta was standing at the intake window. Her expression was the expression of a head nurse who has spent 23 years in emergency medicine and has just seen something that does not fit any of her categories. Victoria looked up. Through the glass of the intake window, in the plastic chairs of the general waiting room, sat a Korean man of about 35 in a bespoke black 3-piece suit. His jacket was buttoned, his tie was straight, his hands rested on his knees in a way that suggested he had been trained by someone, decades ago, to sit exactly like that and had never seen a reason to sit any other way. On the small round table beside his chair were 2 paper cups of coffee, cheap paper cups, the kind that came from the deli on the corner and cost $2.50 apiece with the lid. Victoria's pen stopped moving. He asked for you by name, Loretta said, without taking her eyes off the man on the other side of the glass. He asked polite. He said he would wait. Wait for what? For you to have a minute. I do not have a minute. I told him that. And he said he understood. He said he would wait until you did. Victoria set the pen down. Very carefully, the way you set a scalpel down when you have decided you are not going to use it after all. She looked at the man through the glass. He was not looking back. He was looking at the 2 paper cups the way a man looks at something he has bought and does not yet know how to give. How long has he been sitting there? Since 9:40. The clock over the intake window read 11:14. Victoria felt something cold move slowly up her spine and settle at the base of her skull. Not fear, something older than fear. The instinct of a woman who had learned very young that when a strange man waits for you with 2 coffees, the correct answer is almost always to keep walking. But the man on the other side of the glass had not looked at her once, had not stood, had not preened, had not checked his watch, had not checked his phone. He had simply sat, hands on knees, for 1 hour and 34 minutes, next to 2 cooling cups of coffee, in a plastic chair, in the general waiting room of a public hospital. She realized, in that moment, that she had seen him before. She could not place where. Loretta. Yeah. If I am not back in 10 minutes, come get me. Loretta looked at her sideways. Vic. 10 minutes. Vic. Who is that man? Victoria did not answer, because the honest answer was that she did not know, and the other honest answer, the one that lived under the first, was that some part of her already did. She pushed through the swing door into the waiting room. The fluorescent tubes buzzed. The man in the black suit did not look up until she was standing directly in front of him. When he did, he stood. He did not smile. He did not offer his hand. He picked up one of the paper cups from the table and held it out to her at the exact height of her sternum, so that she would not have to reach. "The coffee is cold," he said, in English so careful it had the shape of a bow. "I apologize. I did not know how long." Victoria looked at the cup. She looked at his face. Fair skin, cool undertone, hair combed back, eyes that were tired in a way sleep could not touch. She looked at the little gold ring on his right hand, and the way the shirt at his throat was buttoned to the second button, and behind the second button, just barely, the top of a black shape that could have been a bruise but was not. She remembered. The laundromat. 3-something in the morning. A weight sitting itself down 3 chairs away from her, and then getting up 40 minutes later, and leaving without a word. Her hands, for the first time in a very long time, were not steady. She did not take the cup. "You need to leave," she said. Quiet, not loud. Loud was for people who did not mean it. "Whatever this is, whoever you are, you need to walk out of this waiting room, and you need to stay out of my world. I do not know you. I do not want to know you. I have work to do." He listened to every word without moving. When she finished, he lowered the cup slowly, so slowly that the coffee did not slosh, and set it back down on the table beside its twin. "I understand," he said. He sat down again. He did not leave. He folded his hands on his knees, exactly as before, and looked at the 2 paper cups, and settled in to wait. Behind the intake glass, Loretta Whitfield mouthed one word Victoria could read across 10 feet of fluorescent air. "What?" Victoria turned on her heel and walked back through the swing door, and the door closed behind her with the soft hydraulic hiss of a hospital that had seen everything and was about to see one thing more. Loretta was at Victoria's shoulder before the door finished closing. "Girl, who is that?" "Nobody," Victoria said. Nobody brought 2 coffees and waited an hour and 34 minutes for nobody. Victoria pulled a chart off the rack and pretended to read it. The letters walked around on the page. She read the same line 3 times and understood none of it. She could feel the shape of him through the wall, 3 chairs deep into the waiting room, hands folded like a man in a pew. "Loretta." "Uh-huh. If he asks again, tell him I'm in a code. You want me to lie for you. I want you to work with me." Loretta pushed her reading glasses up her nose with one knuckle. She looked at Victoria the way she'd looked at her the first week Victoria had walked into the ER 7 years ago, 20 years old and shaking and refusing to leave when the shift ended. She'd seen every version of this woman. She had never seen this version. "Baby," Loretta said quietly, "he already knows you're not in a code." Victoria put the chart back on the rack. She walked to Bay 4, where an old man had thrown up on himself twice and was refusing to lie down, and she spent 11 minutes with him. She got him to lie down. She got him to keep water. She got a smile out of him, small and toothless and grateful. When she came out of Bay 4, the man in the black 3-piece suit was still sitting 3 chairs deep in the waiting room, with 2 paper cups of coffee at his feet. She went into the supply closet and closed the door. She stood in the dark, back against the metal shelves, gauze at her elbow, and she pressed the heels of both hands into her eyes until she saw color. She counted to 20. She counted to 20 again. When she opened her eyes, the closet was still the closet, and the man in the black suit was still on the other side of 2 doors and 3 walls, and it made no difference. She could feel him the way you feel a storm behind glass. She walked out. She worked. At 12:15, a woman came in with a wrist bent the wrong way, and Victoria set the splint and talked her through it in a voice so steady it surprised her. At 12:40, a boy came in with a fever of 104, and Victoria held his mother's hand for 6 seconds and then went and drew blood. At 1:10, a construction worker came in with a nail through the meat of his left thumb, and Victoria numbed the base of the thumb and pulled the nail and dressed it and sent him for a tetanus shot. Every time she passed the intake window, she looked without looking. He was there. The cups were at his feet. At 1:40, Loretta caught her by the elbow in the hallway. He hasn't moved, not once. Bathroom, nothing, just sitting. Good for him. Baby, I said good for him. Loretta let go of her elbow and stepped back and pressed her lips together the way she did when she wanted to say something and had decided against it. She looked at the letter poking out from under Victoria's badge, where Victoria had tucked it after her shift began, the note from Marcus's mother, still folded, still unread. You read that yet? No. You going to? Not today, Loretta. All right. At 2:05, Hannah came out of triage with a hand on her lower back and a plastic cup of ice chips in the other hand, and she stopped in the middle of the corridor and stared through the intake window. Vic. I know. He's been there since I got in. I know, Hannah. Do you know him? No. Hannah looked at her. Hannah was 7 months pregnant and had held a woman's hand through a miscarriage that morning, and she still had enough left in her to notice. You know him a little. I know his face. From where? From nowhere I want to be. Hannah nodded once, slow, the way she nodded at family. She squeezed Victoria's forearm with 2 fingers of her left hand and went back into triage without another word. At 3, the light in the waiting room began to change. The overhead fluorescence stayed the same, but the light coming in through the tall west windows slanted, and it went across the linoleum, and it climbed the leg of the chair he sat in, and it laid a warm bar across his knee. He did not shift out of it. The bar climbed, and he sat inside it. At 3:30, the 2 paper cups at his feet, both untouched, both cold now for hours, began to sweat at their seams. The one on the right split a bead of coffee onto the linoleum. He set the cup upright. He dabbed the linoleum with a napkin from his inside pocket. He folded the napkin and put it back in the pocket. Victoria saw all of this from the intake window while she was writing a discharge summary, and she made 3 typos and had to start over. At 4, Loretta walked out into the waiting room, past him, to the vending machine. She got a bottle of water. On her way back, she paused at his row and she said, without looking at him, "The bathroom is around the corner, first door on the left." "Thank you, ma'am." His voice was low and careful, and it did the small, formal bow with the words that his body could not do sitting down. "You want I should keep an eye on those cups for you. They are for her. They cold." "Yes." "You planning to drink them yourself if she does not?" "No, ma'am." "Then what you planning?" "To stay until she is done." Loretta walked back through the swing door. She came to the counter. She set the water bottle down. She looked at Victoria over the top of her reading glasses and said, in a voice so low Victoria almost missed it, "Baby, that is a strange man, but that is not a lying man. Loretta, I am not telling you what to do. I am telling you what I see. You don't know what he is." "I know what he is doing." Loretta pushed the water bottle toward her. "Drink." Victoria drank. The water was so cold it hurt her teeth. She held the bottle against her wrist, where her pulse was going too fast, and she let it stay there until the plastic went warm. At 4:40, a mass of a family came in through the sliding doors, 6 of them, arguing in Spanish over an old woman on a folding wheelchair who was blue around the mouth. Victoria dropped everything and moved. She had the woman on a bed in 90 seconds, oxygen on her in 2 minutes, An EKG stuck to her chest in 3. She held the old woman's papery hand and she said, in the Spanish her Colombian downstairs neighbor had been teaching her one word at a time, "Estoy aquí, señora, estoy aquí." The old woman's eyes closed and opened and closed. Her fingers tightened on Victoria's. Victoria did not let go until the cardiologist did. When she stepped out of the bay, her scrub was streaked with something dark at the hip, and her chain had swung around behind her neck, and the small V pendant was resting between her shoulder blades. She reached back and slid it around to the front without thinking. It landed at her collarbone, where it had always landed. Through the intake window, she saw him look at it land. One look, then away, then back to the floor. At 6:05, the ER door swung open behind her, and it was Loretta with her coat over one arm. "I am off." "You are off. Come on. I have one more chart. You have 13 more charts, and every one of them is somebody else's. Come on." Victoria signed one, and then a second one, and then Loretta put both hands on the counter and looked at her the way a mother looks at a child. "Baby, if you make me stand here and watch you sign every chart in this ER, just so you do not have to walk past that man, I will do it. But I will remember." Victoria signed a third. She capped the pen. She untied her ponytail and retied it. She unclipped her badge and clipped it back on. She stood. "All right." She walked to the locker room and she washed her face, and she pulled the letter out from under her badge, and she stood looking at it, and she did not open it. She put it in the top of her locker where the fluorescent light hit it. She closed the locker. She came back out. She pushed the swing door open at 6:23, and there he was, 3 chairs deep, the 2 paper cups at his feet, the bar of afternoon light long gone from his knee. He rose when he saw her. He rose the way a man rises for a queen, or for the dead, and it was the same rise both times. "Miss Price, Mr. Kang, Tae-hyun, Kang," she said, and the syllable landed flat, the way a stamp lands. "You have been in that chair since 9:40 this morning." "Yes." 8 hours and 43 minutes. "Yes." "Bathroom?" "Twice." "Food?" "No." "Water?" "Not yet." "Why?" "Because if I got up for water and you came out, I would not be here." She looked at the 2 paper cups. She looked at him. She looked at the 2 paper cups again. She said, "Those are cold." "Yes, they have been cold since about 10. "About." "Throw them out." He bent and picked up both cups without a wobble, and walked to the trash can by the sliding doors, and dropped both cups in, and he came back to the same 3 chairs, and he stood in front of the middle one, and he waited. "I am not sitting down with you," she said. "No." "I am not going anywhere in a car with you." "No." "I am not giving you my number." "No." "So what are you doing?" "Asking if you will eat." "Where?" "Anywhere you say." "With who?" "With me." "Who is paying?" He blinked. It was the first thing his face had done that had not been decided in advance. "I would like to." "You would like to." She let the words sit. "You wait 8 hours in a public waiting room for a woman who told you to stay out of her world. And now you would like to buy her dinner." "Yes." "No." "No?" "I pay half." He was quiet. The quiet went on long enough that Loretta, standing behind the counter pretending to work, lifted her head to see if he had heard her. "Miss Price, half or I go home." "Half, and I pick the place. Please. And if at any point tonight anyone at that restaurant behaves like they know you, I get up and leave and you do not follow me, and you do not come back to this hospital." He inclined his head, not a nod, something older than a nod. "Yes." She turned to Loretta over her shoulder. "Loretta, I am going to eat food. I will be back at my apartment by 9:30. If I am not, my key is with Doña Beatriz downstairs, and my mother's number is in the top drawer next to the bed." "Yes, ma'am," Loretta said, and her voice cracked on the last syllable, and Loretta did not let anything crack, ever, and Victoria heard it and pretended not to. She pushed through the sliding doors into the 6:30 cool of a Los Angeles evening in her navy scrub with the streak of something dark at the hip and the V at her collarbone, and Kang Tae-hyun in his black three-piece suit walked one full step behind her and to the left, and neither of them spoke until they hit the crosswalk. "There is a Salvadoran place on 8th, she said. "Small, fluorescent lights, plastic menus. Yes. You have been. No. Good." She stepped off the curb when the light changed. "Then no one there knows you." He kept the one step behind her and the half step to the left the whole 3 blocks. She did not have to look to know it. Every time she stopped, she felt him stop. Every time she moved, she felt him move. It was like walking with a shadow that had learned to breathe. At the Salvadoran place, the woman behind the counter looked up, looked at Victoria, looked at Kang Tae-hyun in his black suit, and his clean white collar, and his polished shoes, and the little dragon at his collarbone that he had buttoned up against the evening, and she looked back at Victoria. "Mija, you okay?" "Estoy bien, señora Delgado. 2 pupusas revueltas, 1 horchata, 1 water. I am paying for mine." "You are paying for yours." Señora Delgado's eyebrow went up and stayed up. "And him. He is paying for his." "Ah." Señora Delgado wrote it on a green ticket and pushed it back through the little window to the kitchen and did not stop looking at Kang Tae-hyun until he had sat down at the corner table Victoria pointed to, and even then, she looked a little longer. Victoria sat opposite him at the small metal table with the plastic tablecloth taped down at the corners. The overhead fluorescent buzzed. She could hear it. She wanted to hear it. "You have not asked me a single question," she said. "No." "Why?" "Because you did not offer one." "That is a good answer. It is the true one." The horchata came in a plastic cup with a straw. She pushed one of the 2 cups across the table toward him. "You have been drinking coffee all day that you did not drink," she said. "Drink this." He looked at the cup. He picked it up with 2 hands, the way a man picks up something breakable. He drank a small mouthful. He set it back down. "Thank you." "Do not thank me. It is on your bill." He almost smiled. It did not make it all the way to his mouth, but it moved through the muscles around his eyes, and it went away. "Mr. Kang." "Yes." "I am going to eat this pupusa. Then I am going to walk home alone. You are not going to walk with me. You are not going to send a car. You are not going to wait outside my building. If I want to see you again, I will tell Mr. Cho on Thursday, and Mr. Cho will tell you. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Say it." "I understand." Señora Delgado came with 2 plates. The pupusas were still hissing on their edges. She put Victoria's down first. She put his down second. She stood there a beat longer than she needed to. Then she went back behind the counter and picked up a rag and wiped a spot that was already clean and did not take her eyes off the corner table. Victoria picked up her fork. Kang Tae-hyun picked up his fork. They began, in the fluorescent buzz of the small Salvadoran place on 8th, to eat. She paid half at the end, $6.50, in exact bills she counted from the front pocket of her scrub. He paid the other half in a folded 20 and left the change for Señora Delgado, and Señora Delgado tried to hand it back, and he shook his head once, small, and she kept it. At the door, Victoria turned to him. "Thursday, I will be at Mr. Cho's at 2 in the morning like I always am. If you come, you sit in the 6th chair, not the 5th, not the 7th, the 6th, the 6th, and you do not bring anything." "I will not," She stepped out onto the sidewalk into the 6-block walk home. She was going to walk alone, and she was 3 steps down the block when she heard him, behind her, still in the doorway of Senora Delgado's little place, say her name once, quietly, not to call her back, only to say it. "Miss Price." She stopped without turning. "Yes. Thank you for the horchata." She almost laughed. She did not. She kept walking. She did not look back. She walked the 6 blocks in the fading LA blue, with her hand at her collarbone touching the V pendant with the tip of one finger, and she did not know she was doing it until she was already at her stoop, and Doña Beatriz was in the doorway of the panaderia with a paper bag of pan de queso already open, and Doña Beatriz took one look at Victoria's face and pressed the bag into her hand and said nothing at all. 6 days went by, and Victoria did not send word to Mr. Cho, and on the 7th day she woke up before her alarm and knew, the way a body knows weather, that it was Thursday. She lay in the dark of the studio above the panaderia for a full minute, with her hand flat on her sternum, feeling her own heartbeat like it belonged to a stranger. Then she got up. She showered. She braided a section of curls back off her temple and left the rest loose the way she always did. She put on the navy scrub. She fastened the thin gold chain and let the V settle into the hollow of her throat. She did not decide anything. She dressed for work. That was all. She worked a clean 12-hour shift, no code, no losses, 1 wrist splinted, 1 child stitched under the eyebrow, 1 husband told his wife would live. Loretta watched her the way a woman watches a stove she has already turned off, just to be sure. At the end of shift, Loretta laid a palm on the intake counter and said, "You gonna tell me anything, baby, or you gonna make me guess?" Victoria said, "Not yet." Loretta nodded once and let her go. Victoria walked west, 8 blocks. Not east, not toward the panaderia, not toward the bed. West, toward 6th, toward the corner, with no name on Google Maps and the buzzing tube light over Mr. Cho's door. She told herself she was going to check on Mrs. Cho's cardigan. She told herself she owed Mr. Cho a proper $5 for the tea. She told herself a great many things, and none of them were the truth. And the truth was that she wanted to know whether he would obey a rule. She pushed through the door at 7 minutes past 10. The 6th chair was occupied. Not the 5th, not the 7th. The 6th exactly, 3 seats from where she had slept the week before, and Kang Tae-hyun sat in it, with his hands flat on his thighs and his eyes on the far washer, as if he had been given an assignment to memorize its serial number. No duffel, no wrapped bundle, no coffee. He had brought nothing, as instructed. Mr. Cho did not look up from his folding. Mr. Cho had known before she pushed the door. Mr. Cho had a way of knowing. Victoria stood in the doorway with the tube light humming above her and let the door swing closed at her back. Tae-hyun did not turn his head. He had heard her come in. He was waiting for her to speak first, because that was another rule, the one she had not said out loud, but which he had understood anyway. "You're early," she said. "I have been here 40 minutes. "That is not what I said." "No," he agreed. "It is not." She walked past him, past the 6th chair, past the 5th and the 4th, and sat in the 3rd, her old seat. She sat with her spine straight, and her knees together, and her hands loose in her lap, the way a woman sits at a job interview she is only half sure she wants. "You obeyed," she said, to the window. "You gave me a rule. People give rules and men break them. I am not most men." She almost laughed. She did not. Mr. Cho, without turning, set a paper cup of barley tea on the sill between them, exactly halfway between the 3rd chair and the 6th. He set a 2nd cup by his own register and drank from it. He did not offer Tae-hyun anything. Tae-hyun had brought nothing, so he received nothing, and both men understood this, and neither was offended. Victoria took the cup. She warmed her hands on it. "Ask me one question," she said. Tae-hyun considered. She could feel him considering. He did not rush, and that was the thing that made her stomach turn over slow, the way he did not rush. "Do you eat?" he said. "On Thursdays?" "That is not a question. That is a plan." "Then, do you eat tonight?" She held the cup a long moment. Somewhere on the sidewalk, a bus hissed and moved on. "I eat tonight," she said. "Same rules. The Salvadoran? No. Your turn. You pick. I keep the rest." He blinked, one slow blink, and she saw him understand what she had given him. She had given him a small door and had kept both keys. He inclined his head, the way he had inclined it in the hospital corridor, the bow that was older than a nod. "There is a place on Wilshire," he said. "Korean. Small. 6 tables. The owner does not ask names." "6 tables," she repeated. "You picked a small one, so I could not lose you in a crowd." "I picked a small one," he said, "because the fish is honest." She got up. She left the cup half full on the sill. She left the $5 for the tea under the ceramic cat, where Mr. Cho would find it in the morning, and pretend not to see. They walked out together, and she stayed a step ahead of him, and he let her. The Korean place on Wilshire had 6 tables and 1 window covered in rice paper, and the woman at the door was 70 years old, and did not smile at Taehyun, and did not smile at Victoria, and led them to the table farthest from the window without asking. Victoria noted every detail with the calm of a nurse reading vitals. She noted the woman's small bow, the exact angle of it, 3 degrees deeper than politeness. She noted that no menu came. She noted that a pot of buckwheat tea arrived hot and unrequested, and that the small dishes began to fill the table without either of them ordering. Kimchi, cold spinach and sesame, tiny anchovies glazed in soy, a scorched egg custard in a stone bowl. "You did not order," she said. "They know what I eat. They know what you eat because you eat here." "Yes." "How often?" "Often enough." She set her chopsticks down. She looked at him across the table. He met her eyes and did not flinch and did not look away. "Kang Tae-hyun," she said, "do you own this restaurant?" He did not lie. That was the thing she would remember later, when she was walking home, and later still, when she was lying in the dark with the ceiling fan turning. He did not lie. "I own the building. The restaurant. The building. The couple owns the restaurant. You collect their rent. I do not. You forgive their rent." A long silence. He picked up his tea. He put it down. "Once," he said, 6 years ago, the husband was sick." Victoria pushed her chair back an inch. Just an inch. Enough for the sound of it to travel. "You brought me to a room where you cannot lose," she said. Her voice was quiet, and quiet from her was the sound a scalpel makes when it is set on a metal tray. "You brought me somewhere." The woman at the door bows 3 degrees too deep. "You brought me somewhere no menu comes because they already know your mouth. You told me I could pick, and then you made sure the pick was yours. I told you it was mine. You told me after I asked." He absorbed that. He did not defend himself. He set both hands flat on the table on either side of his cup, palms down, the way a man sets down a weapon he is not going to use. "You are right. Do not agree with me to end this." "I agree with you because it is true." She stood up. She did not raise her voice. She did not push the chair over. She simply stood, and she took a $20 bill from the front pocket of her scrub and laid it under her water glass, and she said to the woman at the door, in careful, even Korean she had learned syllable by syllable from Hana in the break room, "Gomap seumnida. Jal mio giotseumnida," although she had not eaten a bite, and the old woman's eyes softened 1 micron, and the old woman bowed again, and Victoria walked out. Taehyun did not follow her. He stayed at the table with the untouched dishes and his hands flat on the wood, and when the old woman came back to clear, he asked her, in Korean, to please leave everything exactly as it was for 1 minute, and she did, and he sat with the 6 small dishes and the empty chair across from him and looked at the empty chair for 1 full minute before he stood up and went out through the back. Victoria walked home in a straight line. She did not touch the pendant. She did not stop at the panaderia. She climbed the stairs and locked the door twice and stood in the middle of the studio with her arms crossed tight and her chin low, and she was not crying, and she was not going to cry, and she stayed like that until the microwave clock rolled from 10:49 to 10:50 and then to 10:51, and then she uncrossed her arms and made herself a bowl of rice with hot sauce and ate it standing at the counter. She did not go to Mr. Cho the next Thursday. She did not go the Thursday after. What arrived instead were the meals. They started on a Monday. Victoria came in for the morning shift at 6:45, and the break room smelled of ginger and garlic and something braised for 8 hours, and on the long table under the notice board, there were 6 aluminum tins with cardboard lids, and the cardboard lids were unlabeled, and Loretta was standing over them with her hands on her hips and her reading glasses pushed up into her hair. "Baby," Loretta said, "you know anything about this?" Victoria looked at the tins. She lifted a lid, short rib, glossy, over rice, still hot. She lifted another, braised tofu with mushrooms. Another, a pot of seaweed soup that meant, in a language Victoria did not fully speak, get well. There were paper plates. There were disposable forks. There was a stack of napkins folded in an origami crane, which was the detail that gave him away, because no caterer in Los Angeles folds napkins in cranes for a hospital break room. "I know something about it," Victoria said. "You gonna tell me?" "Not yet." Loretta looked at her for a long moment, then took a plate and served herself a piece of short rib and said, "Well, I ain't turning down free ribs, baby. Sue me," and sat down, and the night shift filed in behind her, and the food was gone in 35 minutes, and no one asked again. 6 meals became 10, 10 became 15, 15 became a standing Monday delivery, then a standing Monday and Thursday delivery, then a standing 3 times a week delivery, and by the end of the month there had been 30 aluminum tins of hot food set on that table, under that notice board, and Victoria had counted every one. She had not thanked anyone, because there was no one at the door to thank. The tins came in a plain white van, driven by a plain young man, who spoke enough English to say, "for the nurses," and enough Korean not to answer any other question. Then the monitors arrived. Pediatric cardiac monitors. 6 of them, brand new in factory foam, addressed to Ward 7, the children's floor, delivered on a Tuesday morning by a courier who left them at the loading dock with a single line on the packing slip: "Donor requests anonymity." Ward 7 had been asking for those monitors for 3 years. The head of pediatrics, a small tired man named Dr. Ramirez, walked the 6 of them down the corridor himself and said very little to anyone, and had to sit down at the desk in the charge room for a moment with his hand over his mouth. Word did not travel to Ward 7 that any of this had a name attached to it. It didn't need to. Word traveled to Victoria, though, the way water finds a crack, and by Friday of that week she was standing in the elevator with Loretta, and Loretta said, without looking at her, "Whoever the strange man is, baby, he is buying up half the goddamn building." "He is not buying me." "I did not say you." Victoria stared at the floor numbers changing. "I said the building," Loretta said. "You gonna keep pretending you don't know him?" "I know him a little. He is spending more than a little." The elevator opened. Victoria got out. Loretta rode up 2 more floors alone. That was the Friday that broke. At 2:14 in the afternoon, a freeway pileup on the 110 sent 17 ambulances to West General inside 40 minutes. A pregnant driver with a fractured pelvis. A teenager whose helmet had done its job and whose face had not. A construction foreman who had been thrown 30 feet. 3 children from the same minivan. Victoria worked the surge at the head of Trauma Bay 2, her braid coming loose, her scrub soaked from the shoulder to the hip with someone else's blood, her voice flat as ice on the intercom, asking for units of O negative, and asking again, and asking a third time. She got them all. Every one. It was the best work she had done in her life, and she did not know it, and no one had time to tell her. And at 7:11 in the evening, she pushed through the ambulance bay doors to breathe, and she looked across 9th Street, and she saw it. The armored SUV, parked, idling low, windows dark, directly across from the ambulance bay, in a red curb where no one was allowed to park and no meter maid had come to write a ticket. She stared at it. She counted the exhaust in the cold. She turned her head, and she looked at the streetlight, and she looked back, and it was still there. She walked to the curb, slowly. She stepped down onto the asphalt with one foot and stood there in her ruined scrub, with her braid half undone, at the edge of the street, 10 feet of dead asphalt between her and the SUV. The window did not roll down, the door did not open, nothing moved. She stood there for 11 seconds. She would count them later. 11. Then she sat down on the curb. She did not sob. She did not put her hands over her face. She sat on the curb of 9th Street, with her forearms on her knees and her braid over her shoulder, and one tear went down one cheek, one single tear, hot enough that she felt it move, and she let it go, and she wiped it with the back of her wrist, and she stayed on the curb. The SUV did not move. He did not get out. He did not roll down the window and call her name. He did not send Dae-jin across the street with a coat or a bottle of water or a foolish, breakable thing. He sat, in his machine, in his rules, in the space she had drawn around him, and he watched her cry one tear on the curb of a public street, and he did not cross the line. 4 hours he had been there. She would learn later, from a rookie ambulance driver who complained about the parking, that the SUV had rolled up at 3:09, 5 minutes after the first ambulance from the 110 had come screaming in, and it had not moved since. 4 hours, windows dark, motor idle, waiting for her to come out of a door he did not know she would come out of, on a break he did not know she would take, just in case. She sat on the curb another 2 minutes. Then she got up. She wiped her palms on her thighs. She looked once at the SUV. She did not wave. She did not smile. She lifted her chin 1 degree, one small acknowledgement, the smallest that had ever been given between two people in the history of that street, and she turned around, and she walked back through the ambulance bay doors. Inside the SUV, 3 seats deep in the dark, Kang Tae-hyun let out one breath he had been holding for 4 hours. Dae-jin, in the front passenger seat, did not turn around. He said, evenly, without looking, "She saw us. Yes. Do we go?" "Not yet." They stayed another 20 minutes. Then Tae-hyun said one word in Korean, and Dae-jin nodded, and the driver eased the SUV off the red curb and rolled it 3 blocks east and stopped. And Tae-hyun got out on his own and walked, in his 3-piece suit, back to the corner across from the ambulance bay and stood in the deep shadow of a shuttered pawnshop awning until 3 in the morning, until he was sure her shift had ended and she had gotten a taxi with a badge from Loretta and was safely inside the studio above the panaderia, and only then did he raise one hand and the SUV came for him and took him home. Loretta had put Victoria in the taxi herself. She had paid the driver in cash. She had leaned in through the window and said, "Baby, I don't know what you did to save all those people today, but I know you did it, and I know the man across the street knows you did it, and I'm gonna tell you something for free, and then I'm gonna leave you alone about it forever." She had held up one finger. A man who sits 4 hours in a car and does not come in, that is a man who has understood something about you that most men do not want to understand. Victoria had not answered. Loretta had shut the taxi door. At home, At 11:40 at night, Victoria did not sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed with her elbows on her knees and her hand at her collarbone, touching the V pendant with the tip of one finger, and she did not know she was doing it, again. And she stared at the wall, and somewhere on the other side of the wall, Doña Beatriz was punching down dough for the 4 a.m. bake. And somewhere across the city, Kang Tae-hyun was still in his suit with his tie loosened 1 inch, sitting on the edge of a bed that was not his either, and neither of them slept, and neither of them called, and the quiet between them stretched out over Los Angeles, like a wire that had not yet been asked to hold weight. She was going to have to decide something soon. She just did not know, yet, what. Victoria slept 90 minutes and gave up on the rest. She sat on the edge of the bed with her feet flat on the floor and the chain V hooked around her index finger, and she watched the ceiling turn from black to the color of wet paper. Somewhere below her window, Doña Beatriz shut the oven door with the small metal bang that meant the first bread was in. The city started its Saturday the way it started every day, and Victoria pulled a clean navy scrub over her head and tied her curls back and washed her face with cold water until her cheeks stung. She was on the schedule for 9 to 9. She walked the 14 blocks east because the walk was the only thing left in her day she still controlled. 6th Street was empty, except for a Salvadoran man hosing down the sidewalk in front of his taqueria, and a woman pushing a stroller full of laundry. Victoria kept her eyes on the concrete and her hand on the pendant, and she thought about the SUV that had sat 4 hours across a red curb, and the man inside who had not once opened his door, and she thought about how she was going to keep that from being a decision she had already made. By the time she pushed through the swing doors of the West General Emergency, she had convinced herself of nothing. Loretta was at intake with her reading glasses pushed up into the twist-out and a paper cup of vending machine coffee going cold at her elbow. She looked Victoria up and down once, took in the fresh scrub, the tied-back hair, the mouth that was still trying to arrange itself into something she recognized, and she said, "You are not in a code, Price. Do not lie to me about that today. I am not in a code." "Good, then take triage. Yoon needs to sit down every 40 minutes, and I need somebody at the desk with a working brain." Victoria took triage. The morning was the ordinary shape of a Saturday. A boy with an asthma flare and a mother who had run out of albuterol on a Thursday and been ashamed to call. A man with a nail through the meat of his palm from a garage door spring. A woman with chest pain that turned out to be a panic attack that turned out to be a marriage. Victoria worked through them the way she always worked through them. Hand on the shoulder for 2 seconds longer than the chart required. One question in Spanish for the man with the palm because his English broke on the word for tetanus. Water in a paper cup for the woman with the marriage. Hana Yoon rolled her chair up to triage at 10:40, carrying a folded newspaper under one arm and a bag of ice pressed against the back of her neck under the other. "You look like you slept." "I did not." "Neither did I. The baby did that thing where he wedges himself under my ribs. Loretta made me take my ankles up for 20 minutes. Hana set the newspaper on the counter face down and reached for the intake clipboard and started reviewing the last 4 charts because that was the deal she and Victoria had. One of them read while the other one wrote. She turned pages with the slow, careful concentration of a woman whose eyes were tired, and Victoria kept her own hands moving and did not look at the paper. The paper stayed face down for another 8 minutes. Then Loretta called Hana to the phone at the back station about a discharge follow-up, and Hana pushed up out of the chair with the small grunt of a 7-month's belly, and the folded paper slid 2 inches across the counter with her elbow, and it turned itself over. Victoria was writing when it turned. She did not see it right away. She finished the line she was writing, capped the pen, tucked it into the front pocket of the scrub next to the pendant, and only then let her eyes drift left, the way eyes drift left when they are tired, and the day is long, and the paper on the counter has become part of the counter. The front page was folded to a national section. The photograph was black and white and grainy, in the way of newspaper photographs, taken from a distance with a long lens, printed cheap. 3 men, in dark suits, crossing a courthouse plaza in Los Angeles. The caption ran 2 lines under it. Federal indictment names alleged heads of West Coast Korean organized crime syndicate. Kang Tae-hyun, 35, reputed head of the Yong family, seen leaving a preliminary hearing Thursday afternoon. The man in the center of the photograph was walking a step ahead of the other 2. Tall, broad shoulders under a bespoke black 3-piece. Head tipped down and slightly to one side. Left collar open enough that the reader could just make out, if the reader knew what to look for, the dark curl of a dragon head at the base of the throat. Victoria read the caption twice. Then she read the paragraph beneath it. Federal prosecutors were expected to file charges within 30 days on counts including racketeering, tax evasion, and interstate movement of contraband. The Yong family had operated on the West Coast for 2 generations. Kang Tae-hyun had inherited leadership 6 years earlier, at 29, following the sudden death of his uncle. The article used the phrase, "the quiet one," once, in quotation marks, as if borrowing it from someone. She read the paragraph twice. She did not touch the paper. She let it lie exactly where Hana had left it, face up now, the 3 men crossing their plaza in dark suits, and she went back to her chart. She wrote 3 lines about a patient's vitals. She wrote them in her ordinary handwriting. She capped her pen. She recapped her pen. She capped it a 3rd time. Hana came back from the phone. She saw the paper turned over on the counter. She looked at it. She looked at Victoria. She looked at the paper again. She sat down slowly, with her hand on the small of her back, and she said, in the voice she used with patience she did not want to startle, "Victoria, do not. Victoria, look at me." Victoria looked up. Hana's face had gone the color of old milk. She was staring at the paper the way you stare at a snake in the grass a foot from your ankle, and her hand was on her belly, the way it went on her belly whenever she needed the baby to feel her be calm about something she was not calm about. "That is the man from the window. I know. That is the man from the window last Tuesday, with the coffees. I know. Victoria?" Victoria set the pen down. She set it very carefully across the top of the chart, parallel with the top edge, the way she set instruments back on a tray during a procedure so that nothing would move without her moving it. She pressed her palms flat on the counter on either side of the chart, and she looked at Hana and she said, "Quiet. Do not say his name here. Do you know what family that is? Do not say the name of the family here either." Hana closed her mouth. The 2 of them sat at intake for another 6 seconds, and in those 6 seconds, Victoria felt the last month of her life rearrange itself on the counter between her hands. The 2 paper cups on the waiting room bench, the bento boxes with cranes folded into the napkins, the pediatric monitors Ward 7 had wanted for 3 years, the armored SUV parked in a red zone for 4 hours across the street from her ambulance bay, the buckwheat tea that had come to the table without an order, the old woman at the Wilshire restaurant bowing 3 degrees deeper than politeness, the kind, tired man who had walked a step behind and half a step to her left and thanked her for horchata like the horchata was a communion. Every single one of those things was still true. And every single one of those things had been paid for with the kind of money the federal government prints indictments about. Hana whispered, "Baby, sit down." "I am sitting down." "Sit differently. You are white. I am black." "You know what I mean." Victoria breathed in through her nose, held it, breathed out through her mouth. She reached across the counter, took the paper, folded it in half with the photograph inside, folded it in half again, and slid it under the intake clipboard, where it could not be seen by the waiting room. "Give me 10 minutes, she said. Cover triage. Victoria? 10 minutes, Hannah. I am not going anywhere. I am going to the closet. I am going to count. I am coming back. She went to the supply closet. She shut the door behind her and stood between the shelves of gauze rolls and saline bags in the small strip of fluorescent quiet, and she counted to 20. Then she counted to 20 a second time. The first time, she counted to keep the tears in her eyes from becoming tears on her cheeks. The second time, she counted to keep the anger in her chest from becoming a decision she would have to unmake later. At the end of the second count, she understood what she was angry about. She was not angry that he had money. She was not surprised the money was crooked, because a man does not sit 4 hours across a red zone for a woman he has known for a month without something in his life being crooked. She was not even angry that he had let her see the shape of the money before she saw the source of it. He had not lied. He had told her, on the sidewalk outside the coffee cup afternoon, that he would not lie. He had not. She was angry that she had almost let the paper cups and the cranes and the buckwheat tea become the story. She was angry that she had almost let a good man, who was also a bad man, carry her. She opened the door. Hannah was at triage with a boy holding an ice pack to his elbow. Victoria walked past her, went to the locker room, opened locker 42, and took Mrs. Marcus's folded note from the top of the shelf where it had sat unopened for a month. She opened it. The mother had written in blue ballpoint on a sheet of pharmacy notepaper, and her handwriting slanted a little to the right, the way the handwriting of women who had not written a full page in a long time slants. The note said, "The nurse with the long hair and the kind hands. I do not know your name. My son knew your name because you told him at the door. He said Miss Price 3 times before he closed his eyes. I want you to know." He said it 3 times, and each time he was less afraid. "Please keep going. My son was not the last boy you will meet. Yolanda Marcus." Victoria read the note. She read the note a second time. She put it in the front pocket of her scrub, over the pendant, and she went back to triage. At 12:05, she asked Loretta for 15 minutes, and Loretta looked at her face and did not ask what for. Victoria went out through the ambulance bay, crossed 9th Street at the light, and walked 1 block west to a payphone bolted to the outside wall of a bodega. She had not used a payphone in 6 years. She fed it 2 quarters from the change she carried for coffee. She dialed the number for Cho's 24-hour laundromat, which she had memorized without meaning to memorize. Mr. Cho picked up on the 3rd ring. Cho's. "Mr. Cho, it is Victoria Price." The pause on the other end was 1 heartbeat long. "Yes, Miss Price. I need you to give a message to the man on the 6th chair. I will give it. Tell him I am at the front doors of West General at 7:30 tonight. Tell him he can come. Tell him it is the last time. Tell him if he sends anyone else in his place, I will not be there. I will tell him, in those words. Thank you, Mr. Cho." Miss Price. "Yes. He is a person who listens." She did not answer. She hung up the phone. She walked back across 9th Street and finished her Saturday shift. At 7:28, she was on the sidewalk outside the main entrance, out of scrub for the first time in 3 weeks, wearing jeans and a gray t-shirt, because she had wanted to be exactly the person she was. No armor, no signal, nothing borrowed. The chain V lay flat against her sternum under the collar. Her hair was still tied back. Her hands were in her pockets because she did not trust her hands. The armored SUV pulled up at 7:29 and 40 seconds. It parked 1 door back from the entrance, in a legal spot, not a red zone. Dae-jin stepped out of the passenger door with the discipline of a man who had rehearsed the movement in his head twice on the drive over, walked around to the curbside rear door, opened it, and did not look at Victoria. Kang Tae-hyun got out. He was in the full 3-piece, tie knotted, shoes polished. Everything the way it was the first night in the laundromat, and the way it had been every time since. He walked 6 steps toward her, and stopped at a distance that was not close and not far. He did not offer his hand. He did not speak first. He waited. She looked at his face. She had looked at his face many times now, in the fluorescent light of a laundromat, in the fluorescent light of an emergency waiting room, in the yellow lamp of a Salvadoran corner booth, in the paper lantern shadow of a Wilshire restaurant, across the width of a hospital street at dusk. She had never once looked at it and seen a lie in it. She looked at it now and she still did not see a lie in it, and that was the worst of the things she had discovered today. "I know who you are," she said. He did not answer. "I read the paper. I read what the paper said. I read the name. I know the shape of the family. I know the word they used for you." He did not answer. "I want you to hear me say something, and I want you to not answer until I am done. Can you do that?" "I can." She took her hands out of her pockets. She held them at her sides, the way she held them at the foot of a bed when she was about to tell somebody a thing they were not going to want to hear. The coffees were real. The bento boxes were real. The monitors on Ward 7 are saving children right now. The 4 hours you sat across the street last Friday were the truest thing anybody has done for me in a long time. I am not going to pretend those things did not happen. I am not going to pretend they did not matter. They mattered. She held his eyes. And they were paid for with money that hurt people. Somewhere, somebody paid so that a woman on Ward 7's night shift could have a working monitor for her patient. Somewhere, somebody paid so that a night nurse on my floor could open a bento with a paper crane in it. I do not get to keep those things and also keep my hands clean. I have been trying for a month to figure out how to keep them. I cannot. Dae-jin, on the sidewalk behind Taehyun, dropped his eyes to the pavement. "So, I am going to say this, and I need you to hear it as a decision, not as a door left open. I am hearing it. I decide, from tonight, who is in my life. Not you, not your money, not the paper, me. I am telling you, tonight, that you are not in it. I am not asking you to convince me. I am not asking you to explain the paper. I am not asking you to convince me. I am telling you what I have decided." She waited. He waited with her. "You said, once, that you would not lie to me. I am asking you to keep that. I am asking you to not send Mr. Cho a message. I am asking you to not sit in a car across a street. I am asking you to not put a bento in my break room. I am asking you to leave the space my life takes up alone." His mouth moved once, the smallest downward pull at the corner, and then it stilled. "Tell me you heard me. I heard you. Tell me you will do it." He was quiet for a count of 4. She counted it. Then he said, in the ceremonial English she had come to recognize as the shape of his most careful speech, "I will do what you have asked. I will not send. I will not sit. I will not deliver. I will not cross into the space of your life. You will not see me unless you send for me. If you do not send for me, you will not see me." Say it once more. "You will not see me unless you send for me." "Thank you." She did not put her hand out. He did not put his hand out. She walked back through the doors of the West General Emergency, past the intake counter where Hana Yoon was standing with both hands on her belly watching the sidewalk through the glass, past Loretta at the medication station with her reading glasses on the tip of her nose, past the boy with the ice pack still waiting for his x-ray. She walked into the supply closet. She closed the door. She stood in the strip of fluorescent quiet between the gauze and the saline for exactly as long as she had stood there that morning. She counted to 20 once. She did not count to 20 twice. She went back to work. Outside, the armored SUV pulled away from the curb at 7:39 and turned east on 9th toward the industrial spine of downtown. Kang Tae-hyun sat in the back with his hands flat on his thighs and his eyes on the seam where the window met the door. He did not speak for 4 blocks. Dae-jin, in the passenger seat, did not turn around. On the 5th block, Taehyun said, "Quiet." In Korean, "She is right." Dae-jin said nothing. "She is right about the money." Dae-jin said nothing. "Take me to the warehouse, then take yourself home. I do not need you tonight." "Boss, go home, Dae-jin. Sleep in your own bed. Tomorrow we will speak about the indictment. Tonight, go home." Dae-jin, who had not gone home on a night his boss was alone in 12 years, said, "Yes, boss," in the flat, obedient voice of a man who had understood that the order was not about the indictment. The SUV rolled east. Inside the hospital, Victoria finished her shift at 9. Loretta walked her to the ambulance bay. Hana was waiting there with a paper bag from the vending machine that contained a granola bar and a bottle of water and a folded piece of paper with a phone number on it that was not Hana's phone number. "Whose is this?" "My cousin, in Koreatown. She runs a small firm. If you need somebody to look at anything, on the paper side, she is who I would send you to." Victoria took the paper. She did not look at the number. She put it in her back pocket next to the payphone quarters she had not spent. Loretta hugged her. It was a short hug, the kind Loretta gave when she was pretending she was not hugging. "Get home, Price." Victoria walked the 14 blocks east. She did not stop at the panaderia. Doña Beatriz was at the window and lifted a hand, and Victoria lifted a hand back, and that was as much as either of them needed. She climbed the stairs. She unlocked her door. She locked it behind her, both bolts. She sat on the edge of her bed with her feet flat on the floor and her hand on the chain V, and she looked at the ceiling. Somewhere across the city, in a room that was not his either, a man who had promised not to send would keep his promise. She believed him. That was the part that was going to be hard. She turned out the light. She did not sleep, and she did not cry, and she did not check the window for the shape of an armored SUV that would not be there because she had asked it not to be there. She lay in the dark with her hand on the pendant, and she let the thing she had done settle into her chest, the way a stone settles into the bottom of a river, slow and heavy, and not going anywhere. At 3 in the morning, she reached across to the nightstand and picked up Mrs. Marcus's note from where she had set it beside her keys. She read it again in the dark, by the light of the street lamp through the blind, and the line she read last was the line she had read first. "Please keep going." She put the note back on the nightstand. She turned her face into the pillow. She kept going. 6 days moved past her like water past a stone. Victoria worked. She slept in pieces of 4 hours. She ate standing at the counter. She stopped checking the street from the second-floor window because checking the street meant admitting she was looking for a car that would not come. The car did not come. Kang Tae-hyun had said a sentence in front of a hospital, and the sentence held. On the 7th morning, Loretta caught her at the coffee pot in the break room. "You look thinner." "I look the same." "You look thinner, and you look like you slept on a bench." Victoria poured the coffee. She did not answer. Loretta let it sit, and then said the other thing. "Nobody has come. Not one bento. Not one man in a coat. Not one van. I know. I just wanted you to hear me say, I noticed." Victoria carried her cup back to intake. She set it down and forgot it, and it went cold there for the next 3 hours. On the 9th day, Hana passed her a folded printout in the medroom. It was a paragraph from a Korean-language news site, translated by Hana's cousin the lawyer. The paragraph named a shipping route and a warehouse near the port. It said federal agents had begun surveillance 48 hours earlier. It said one name in bold. Victoria read the name once and gave the paper back. "Burn it. You want to know more?" "No." Hana folded the paper into her scrub pocket and put her hand on her belly for a beat and walked out. She burned it in her kitchen sink that night. Victoria never saw a scrap of that page again, and never asked what else Hannah had learned. That was Wednesday. Thursday morning at 7:14, a black SUV she did not recognize pulled to the curb across from the bakery. It was not the armored one. It was smaller, older, a working car. The driver did not step out. Only one man stepped out. Park Dae-jin. He wore a plain gray suit, no holster line under the jacket, no earpiece. He carried a brown paper bag folded twice at the top. He carried nothing else. He crossed the street on the diagonal and stopped at the bottom of Victoria's stoop and waited, without ringing the bell and without looking up at her window. Victoria was already at the window. She had heard the engine. She came down in bare feet. She opened the street door and stayed inside the frame. She did not step onto the stoop. He is not supposed to send. He is not sending me. I am the one who came. That is the same thing. It is not. The scar on Dae-jin's right eyebrow lifted a millimeter when he spoke. Victoria had never noticed it in the hospital 7 years ago, because 7 years ago, she had been holding gauze against his neck with both hands and looking at the artery and not at the face above it. She noticed it now. He is going somewhere, Dae-jin said. His English was slower than Taehyun's, heavier at the vowels. Tonight, he may not come back. Then he should not have come to your car this morning. He did not. I came without telling him. He does not know I am here. Victoria looked at the bag. You should give it back. I cannot. It was already in a drawer with your name on the tape. If I put it back, he will find it in a week and open it and read what he wrote. He is not supposed to read what he wrote. What did he write? I did not read it. I do not read what is not mine. Victoria did not move. Dae-jin held the bag at chest height, the way Taehyun had held the coffee cup that first morning in the emergency waiting room, the exact same height, and Victoria felt the echo before she understood it. 2 men in this family had learned to offer things at the height of the sternum. That was somebody's training. She took the bag. Go. Miss Price. Go. He stepped back off the stoop. Then he stopped. He did not turn around, but he did not go either. He spoke to the door. I owe you my life. Victoria's hand tightened on the paper bag. 7 years ago. West General. Emergency. I know when. He does not. I know he does not. Dae-jin nodded once at the ground. Then he walked back across the street on the diagonal, got into the passenger seat of the older car, and the car pulled away. He never turned his head to look at her window. Victoria closed the street door and climbed the stairs and locked her own door twice, and sat on the edge of the bed with the paper bag on her knees. She opened it slowly, the way she opened chart binders in the ER, one motion at a time so that nothing fell. Inside was a folded white cotton blouse. Long sleeves, a small tear at the left cuff seam. It was the blouse she had left in a plastic bag on the 3rd chair at Cho's laundromat 5 weeks ago because she had come to nap and had forgotten the bag when she woke up. Mr. Cho had never mentioned it. He had given it to Taehyun, or Taehyun had asked. Either way, the blouse had been washed and folded and pressed, and the tear at the cuff seam had been mended with tiny white stitches, 6 of them, perfectly even, done by hand. On top of the folded blouse was one sheet of thin paper, folded once. The handwriting was black ink, small, upright, printed characters, no cursive. That morning I walked in to wash a shirt. I walked out wanting to change my life. T. That was the whole note. Victoria read it once. She held it against her lap. She read it again. She did not read it a 3rd time. She put the note back on the blouse and folded the blouse over the note. She put the bag by the door. She put on jeans and a gray t-shirt. She pulled her curls into a low knot at the nape of her neck and left the chain V outside the collar, resting on the cotton. She wrote 3 words on a post-it and stuck it to the inside of her front door for Doña Beatriz to find when she came up with the 2nd floor spare key at 9. the way they had agreed a year ago after a scare on the stairs. Back before dawn, she did not take the paper bag with her. She went down the stairs. She walked 6 blocks east and cut north and hailed a cab at the corner of 12th and Vermont. She gave the driver an address she had never said aloud before, but that she had known since she was 22, since her first Los Angeles year, since a college roommate had driven her up there on a night she had needed a road to end at something bigger than her. Griffith, the East Overlook, the one you can reach by car until midnight, and then you have to walk the last stretch under the running lights. The driver looked at her in the mirror once. He did not ask. While the cab climbed, at the same hour, at the warehouse in downtown, Kang Tae-hyun stood in the small back office with a leather duffel on the desk and a passport in his inside jacket pocket that did not carry his real name. Dae-jin stood in the doorway with the radio on his shoulder. The car for the airport had been waiting for 11 minutes. Tae-hyun did not look at Dae-jin. He was checking the cuffs of his shirt. "You went out this morning." "Yes." "You did not tell me." "No." Tae-hyun raised his eyes. He did not raise his voice. He never raised his voice. "Where?" "To her door." The silence in that office was the silence of a room where 3 men who were not in the room were about to fire whoever moved first. Nobody moved. "I told her I was going. I told her you did not know. I gave her the blouse and the note. She took them. You had no right." "I know. You had no right, Dae-jin." "I know." Tae-hyun set both hands flat on the desk. He looked at his own knuckles for a long time. When he spoke again, it was quieter, not calmer. "Why?" Dae-jin did not answer. He looked at the floor between his boots. Then he set the radio down on the corner of the desk very carefully, the way a man sets down a weapon he no longer wants to hold, and he stood there with his empty hands hanging. "Sajangnim. Say it. 7 years ago. Say it. West General Emergency. Trauma Bay 4. The night the Kim brothers came for me at the Noodle House. You were still in Seoul. I came in with the right carotid split open. There was a nurse who came off her shift and did not go home. She was a first year. She held the gauze on my neck with her bare thumb inside the wound for 18 minutes because the vascular surgeon was in traffic and the pressure could not come off. She spoke to me the whole 18 minutes so I would not sleep. She told me her name was Price and her mother was from Louisiana and her father was from Alabama, and she had 2 brothers and one of them was funny. She told me the story of the funny brother twice because the surgeon was still not there. When the surgeon came, she stepped back and she washed the blood off her thumb in a metal sink, and she did not ask me who I was. She did not know who I was. Tae-hyun had not moved. His hands were still flat on the desk. "Go on." "When I saw her in the laundromat that night, I recognized her from the chain and from the badge. I did not tell you. I chose not to tell you. I told you she was a good person, and that was her story. That was not the whole truth. The whole truth is that I have owed her my breathing for 7 years, and I have not paid her back, and I will never pay her back, because a thing like that is not paid back. And I could not stand in that office 1 more hour and let you get on a plane that might not land without her having in her hand something you wrote." The radio on the desk crackled once and was silent again. Tae-hyun took his hands off the desk. He walked to the window. He looked at nothing outside the window. He looked at his own reflection in the black glass. He spoke to the reflection. "Where is she now?" Dae-jin looked at his watch. "If she moved when I think she moved." "Griffith." "East Overlook." "How do you know?" "She has gone there before. Her medical file lists it as her emergency contact address, once by mistake, 5 years ago, when she was living in her car for 2 weeks after a lease. I remember because I remembered her name." Tae-hyun did not say anything for a full breath. Then he said, "Cancel the flight." "Sajangnim." "Cancel it. Tell Seoul the meeting moves. If they do not agree, they do not agree. Call the driver." Yes. Dae-jin. Sajangnim. You did not have the right, and you did the right thing. Those are two different things. Do not do either of them again. Yes. The armored SUV came up the road toward the east overlook with the running lights off, the way it always did, the way Taehyun preferred. It parked 20 meters short of where the paved path ended. Dae-jin got out first. He walked around to the passenger side and opened the door, and Taehyun stepped out in a plain black overcoat over the white shirt with the top 2 buttons open. He had left the jacket and the vest and the tie in the car. The dragon tattoo climbed dark at the base of his neck under the moonlight. Dae-jin closed the door behind him. He bowed once, from the waist, not deep, but not shallow either. It was not a bow he had given Taehyun before. It was a bow for someone else who was not there. He got back in the car and pulled it 30 meters back down the road and killed the lights and waited without watching. Taehyun walked the paved path alone. Victoria was at the low wall at the end of the overlook. She had her elbows on the wall. She had the note between 2 fingers of her right hand. The moon was 3/4 full and low over the basin, and the city underneath was a floor of small yellow constellations that did not know she was up here. She did not turn around when she heard the footsteps. She had known which footsteps they were before he was 10 meters out. He stopped 1 arm's length behind her. He did not close the last step. You came. I came. You did not send for me. I sent for you when I got in the cab. You just did not know it yet. He almost smiled. She heard it in his breathing. She turned around. She kept her back to the wall. She looked at him, and she looked at the note, and she folded the note once between her fingers and put it in the back pocket of the jeans, the pocket that already held a slip of paper with a lawyer's phone number on it, and now held 2 pieces of paper worth keeping. I was afraid of the wrong thing. He waited. I told you at the hospital I could not hold the 2 things, the bento and the money that hurt somebody. I meant it. I still mean it. But when I said it, I thought I was afraid of the money. I am not. I am afraid of loving a man who can disappear on a Thursday morning, and I will only find out on the news on Friday night. That is what I am afraid of. That is a different thing. Yes. Do not tell me it will not happen. It may happen. Then tell me the other thing. He took the last step. He did not touch her. He put both his hands in the pockets of the overcoat because he needed something to do with them, and standing near her without doing something with them was harder than he had counted on. I cannot give you a life that is safe. I can give you a life that is true. If I go somewhere I do not come back from, you will know before the news. You will know from me if there is time. You will know from Dae-jin if there is not. You will not read my name in a paragraph before you know it. That is what I can promise. That is the only thing I can promise that is worth anything. Say it again. He said it again. She made him say it a 3rd time, the way she had made him repeat the sentence on the sidewalk in front of the hospital, and by the 3rd time, the words had stopped being ceremony and started being the shape of an actual agreement. There is one other thing. Say it. I did not know about Dae-jin until an hour ago. He told me in the office. He said your name and the year and the noodle house and 18 minutes and a metal sink. He told me because he could not let me leave without you having the note. I am telling you because I do not want any part of what is between us to sit on a debt I did not know I owed. Victoria did not say anything for a while. She looked past his shoulder at the SUV parked 30 meters back with its lights off and the shape of Dae-jin sitting in the driver's seat, with his head bowed and his hands on the wheel and not looking up at them and not looking at anything. Tell him I said thank you. He will not accept it. Tell him anyway. Yes. She stepped forward. She lifted both her hands, and she put them on his face, one on each side, the way she put her hands on the faces of family members of patients when she was about to say something that had to hold them up. She held his face the way she had held Daejin's neck 7 years ago in a trauma bay, with the exact steady pressure of a woman who had decided that this was not going to slip. She looked at him for one long second, the tattoo dark at the collar under her thumb, and then she pulled his mouth down to hers, and she kissed him under the moon, in jeans and a gray t-shirt, having chosen. He did not put his hands on her, not yet. He kept them in the pockets of the overcoat for the length of the kiss, because putting them on her felt like a thing he had not been given permission for yet. When she stepped back, she took his right hand out of the pocket and laced her fingers through his, and set their joined hands on the low wall between them, over the city, and only then did he let out the breath he had been carrying since the office. She looked at their hands. She looked at the moon. She spoke without looking at his face. Twice. What? You washed your hands twice that morning. In the office. You did not know you did it. Daejin told my colleague once, months later, and my colleague told me on a stairwell, and I never forgot it. You washed them once, and then you looked at them and you washed them again. That was when I stopped being able to walk away all the way. I did not know it then. I know it now. He looked at her for a long time. I did not know I did it either. I know that was the point. Down the road, in the front seat of the SUV, Daejin lifted his head one time. He looked up at the two figures at the low wall, joined at the hands, black city under them, moon over them. He lowered his head again. He put both his hands back on the wheel and he waited without watching, the way he had waited outside a laundromat for 40 minutes, on a night that had turned out to be the beginning of everything, 7 weeks and 7 years at once. Victoria did not go home before dawn. She stayed at the wall until the moon dropped behind the ridge and the yellow constellations of the city began to fade under the first gray. She kept her hand in his the whole time. They said very little. There was very little left to say that could not wait until morning. She thought about Yolanda Marcus's note in the drawer of her nightstand. She thought about the words, "Please keep going." She thought that keeping going and having somewhere to go back to were not the same thing, and she had, at 27, just been given both in the same night. When the first gray came, she stepped back from the wall. She kept his hand. She turned toward the car and she walked with him toward it, and Daejin, seeing them come, got out of the driver's seat, walked around, and opened the back door for her before he opened it for Taehyun. And he did not look up at her face when he did it, and she touched the top of his hand once as she passed him, and she said one word in Korean that Hana had taught her weeks ago in a break room. Gomawoyo. Thank you. Daejin bowed his head. He closed the door. The SUV pulled away from the overlook with the running lights off, down the mountain, back into the city that had not known any of them were up there. Victoria kept his hand the whole way down. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Tell me, K-Fam, have you ever loved someone whose world could swallow you whole and chose to stay anyway? Have you ever saved a stranger's life without asking their name, and years later found out that silence was the only thing keeping you alive? Mark my words, K-Fam. Some debts get paid in blood, others get paid in patience. Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, silent debts, and love that chooses the truth over the fairy tale, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel